Hey everybody, so today's chat is about movement and how it can actually enhance your cognition. I'm going to provide you with some evidence that is going to make the old model of cognition seem very archaic, ancient, and something that you probably will wonder why you ever thought that was actually plausible. So the new model of cognition comes from a new radical theory of cognitive science known as 4E cognitive science. And it proposes that your cognition is deeply participatory and interdependent on movement itself. And it is a model that is completely diametrically opposed to the old way of thinking. So in order for us to draw a clear picture of it, let's talk about the old standard model of how people thought cognition went. And it goes something like this. Stuff happens out in the world. It interacts with you. Your senses filter that action, and then the information gets shot into your mind where it gets transmuted in some type of wormhole space-time continuum dimension until it finally lands into a spot of computation. And for this video, we'll call this spot of computation your inner Google. Your inner Google receives the information and then makes analysis and then shoots directions back out to your body and where it interacts with the world. So that's the old model. And to give you a little bit of a bigger picture, something that's a little more easier to think about. Imagine you go into your favorite coffee shop. You walk in, you see the menu, you see your barista that you know, you see a couple in front of you, a husband and a wife, and they're just getting their drink order. When you walk up, the barista says, "What would you like today?" And according to the old model, that signal is then shot into your mind where it's this magical, mystical spot, your inner Google. It does its computations and then it sends out the directions back out into your body to tell you what appropriate actions to take, which in this case might be something like you verbalizing you want a double espresso while at the same time reaching for your wallet. In short, sensation happens, gets launched into the mind, computation occurs in this one spot, and that's the only place it occurs. And then it shoots directions back out into your body. So you can see that this model is very cut off from the physical. It's very as if your brain was in a vat or in a jar somewhere on a shelf doing computations, and then your body is separate from it. And the new model is something that explains so much more, and it lays out the interaction of our body and our mind in a much more sophisticated way. So the new model proposes that your brain is dynamically coupled, it's linked, it's connected to your body in such a way that cognition itself is enacted. It's only made possible through something called the sensory motor loop. So the next question is, what is the sensory motor loop? How does it function, and why is it a better model than the ghost in the machine model where you have an inner Google that does its thing and then shoots out directions? So the sensory motor loop has to do with your ability to adaptively seek. Let's go back into the coffee shop. Remember, you walked in, a lot happened at once. You saw your barista, the menu, and the couple in front of you. Now, the couple, the husband had a Frappuccino, the wife had a double espresso. And even though you're standing still, you are still actively perceiving the espresso. Maybe your eyes are moving, you're shifting your weight. What you're doing is called adaptively seeking in that environment of the coffee shop. With all the things that are going around, you are able to kind of zero in on what matters to you. Now, if you want a thorough breakdown on adaptive seeking, I would suggest watching the cognitive scientist, brilliant gentleman by the name of John Vervaeke, where he breaks it down in depth. I'm going to do my best to summarize it and then use the coffee shop analogy to help you kind of grasp it so it's a little easily understood. So adaptive seeking behavior. What is proposed in this is that at the core of our cognition is our ability to adaptively seek the necessary conditions in any environment that will perpetuate our existence. In essence, the way our brain is wired to function is actually continuous with life's principles and processes. And this allows biological entities to exist as biological entities. So let's go back to the coffee shop so we can kind of explain that previous sentence. Remember, you're in the coffee shop. You are currently adaptively seeking in that environment. That's your behavior. And you've looked around and you have found what is important to you, what is central to you, what is relevant to you is that espresso. That's why you zeroed in on it. And what you have to understand about this adaptive seeking is that you are literally making your cognition because it is interdependent and interconnected to your movement. Not only that, but it's continuous with how you make your movement. And it's necessary for you to live. In this case, it's something silly, perhaps, but you need that coffee to exist. You know, perhaps 1,000 years ago would have been more geared for finding water in a desert or in a jungle. But nonetheless, at the moment, that espresso is relevant to you. It's important to you. It is central to you. And the question is, how are you making your cognition? Well, here's the thing. You see the espresso, and even though you're standing still, your eyes are still moving, you're imagining, you're visualizing. As the sensory information changes, that changes how you move. And when you change how you move, you change the sensory information that you're getting. And as the sensory information changes, you change how you move. So it creates this dynamically coupled sensory motor loop that is adaptively seeking, and it is based on what you find relevant. Now, what makes this optimal and what makes it the sensory motor loop continuous and it makes it adapt so that you can make your cognition breaks down like this. And once you understand this, it's going to clarify a whole lot more than just the adaptive seeking. Behavior is going to clarify, I would argue, popular narrative. So, new sensory information, what does that mean? That means if you see the espresso, maybe you'll shift your weight and now you can smell the espresso. So that changes the information that you're getting, changes how you move. And you can actually look at something and zoom into it. You can also zoom out. And depending on what is important to you at that moment, you will find a balance between the two. So for example, when you walked into the coffee shop, you were able to zoom out and see everything. But the moment you notice something and you're still not moving, you were able to zero in on something and get the little details. So you're constantly moving from the big picture to the little details. And it doesn't mean that you have to move. It means that you are doing that within the sensory information that you're getting and how you're just perceiving the world around you, because again, you are always adaptively seeking. Even now, you're trying to figure out how this is going to benefit you. What is important to you? Is the person saying anything relevant? Can I use this in some way? You're doing it constantly. So now that if you shifted your weight, now you can smell the espresso, that new information comes in, but you have to find an optimal balance between the big picture and the little details. You can't get too close because that will be weird. That's someone's drink order. But you don't want to be far enough away because it's important to you. So you find this balance between the big picture and the little details. And what's interesting is if you think about the stories you read, the movies you watch, that's what a director essentially does. They're constantly doing adaptive seeking behavior and they're finding what is relevant for the viewer and the character. So you'll have close-ups, you'll have wide shots, you'll have top view shots, and you're moving back and forth from these different purviews or angles, so to speak, and this is changing how you think because the movement is changing. And as the movement changes, it changes how you think, and it goes back and forth, back and forth. Stories you read, they do the same thing. Authors will go into magnified detail on a character, or they'll take a big picture of an environment and they'll describe it to you, but it's the same thing. So in other words, this explains so much more. Maybe the next time someone says, you know, to you, well, why would I get up and move around? It's not going to change how I think about anything. You can kind of explain to them, well, yeah, that's if you follow that old model where you're just like some ghost in the machine waiting for information and then sending directions out to the body, which makes zero sense. Or you can explain to them that, hey, actually, no, your brain is coupled to your body and you are making your cognition through this sensory motor loop because you are constantly seeking what is adaptive to you and what is relevant to you. And you're doing this moment to moment. And you're constantly moving from the big picture to the mid picture to the little picture. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. And if you have any questions on that, I know it's a lot to kind of take in, please send me a message.